Monday Night Rugby on Off the Ball.
With Vodafone, official sponsors of the Irish rugby team. Team of us. Everyone in.
Now, the Lions have touched down on South African soil. Once again, it's a Munster captain leading the way. 12 years on from Paul O'Connell, a more unexpected choice in the form of Conor Murray on his third tour now. Not something he expected, but events conspired. Alan Wynne-Jones's tour over before it started, and so Murray leads the Lions, Alan Wynne-Jones and Justin Tipuric out of the tour. Very happy to say Gerry Thornley of the Irish Times is with us. Hi, Gerry.
How you doing, Joe? You well?
Yeah, very well. And Gordan Darcy, a British and Irish line tourist of New Zealand and South Africa. Hi, Gordan.
How you getting on, guys? Gerry,
yeah,
good to see you.
Very well, very well. So, Gerry, geez, the first game, it was meant to be a fairly forgettable, slow news day, and then all hell kicked off between Tipuric and then obviously Alan Wynne-Jones after just 7 minutes. We'll come to the loss of Wynne-Jones, but the Conor Murray news, I think, is what's grabbed everybody. Even he himself admitted some surprise at the selection.
Yep, he was surprised. I was surprised. I'd say Gordan was surprised. You were surprised. I'd say most of his teammates in Ireland and Munster would have been surprised. I painstakingly went through the Munster's records, and he's only captained Munster once before, and that was in September 2014 against the Ospreys. So, and I regret to inform you that Munster lost. But I mean, and that was down to his captaincy. But that's the only time he's ever captained Munster. He's never captained Ireland. The thing is, he wouldn't even be known as a particularly vocal player in the dressing room or even on the pitch so much, certainly not in the dressing room by his teammates. So that's why they were surprised. But clearly, Warren Gatland sees leadership potential in him. I think what's one of the main reasons he's been made captain is just because of his status as a player, Joe. He is clearly one of the few players whom Warren Gatland and the other coaching staff regard as a very probable test starter. And he was a starter in all three tests last time around. There is no other Alan Wynne-Jones in the squad. There is no other world record holding lock. There is no other four-time tourist, the only playing survivor from the Tour of South Africa 12 years ago. So of those that were left, I guess what it tells you is that he's more sure of his place in the team as things stand than even Owen Farrell or Stuart Hogg, the English and Scottish captains, because if you look at them, Owen Farrell doesn't bring an awful lot of test form at 10 into this tour. He's been playing the championship with Saracens, and when he played for England, he started the Six Nations at 10 against Scotland, but was moved to 12 before the end of the match and stayed there for the rest of the tournament. So Stuart Hogg, he's been captaining Scotland. He's had an exhaustive season with Exeter. They've made three finals and a semi-final in one prolonged season. And towards the end of it, Rob Baxter was preferring Jack Nowell to him at half at full-back in both the semi-final and final of the Premiership. So you go through the rest of the candidates, Ian Henderson, Maro Itoje. It's very competitive in the second row. Henderson might well be calling the line-out, so that's enough on his plate. The more you go through it, then you think, yeah, okay, maybe it makes sense that it's Conor Murray. It's still very left field and very typically Warren Gatland.
Gordan, your reaction to the news and your sense of Murray in the dressing room?
There's an awful lot of probably similarity in what Gerry was saying there. To be honest, it was made even more strange by the way that Gats talked about Owen Farrell during the week, in that everybody very, very clear that they wanted Owen Farrell as in the leadership group. He got the most votes. I'd say he would have loved to have been able to take that soundbite back if he had known what was going to unfold in front of him. There is another talismanic figure in there, and that would have been not talismanic, but the biggest, I suppose, personality in that changing room is that Owen Farrell, and we liken him to Johnny Sexton, that force of nature type of player, but he's just not guaranteed his starting place. And I think the thing about Lions Tour, and I've been on two of them. One of them went really well. One of them didn't go particularly well. But there was no continuity between them. But Conor Murray brings a continuity between three Lions Tours and that experience that just cannot be recreated. And he's played under brilliant captains. I think you tease into what he has said, and it's kind of said, like, listen, I'm the figurehead, but I have a brilliant leadership group underneath me. So all the names that we're kind of surprised about, that were, everybody was, looking at saying the Maro Itojes and the Owen Farrells, like those guys have to get in the team. There was probably a couple of percent difference between all the three scrum halves, where you're not massively gaining or losing between Murray and his Welsh counterpart. And this was just a good decision to make. It was a strong decision to make, and it backs Conor, and it gives an awful lot of certainty into it. And it also kind of gives you a good setup of how they're going to play. You talk about different leadership styles and how you go. I think you've got those people who you walk in. You've Paul O'Connell's, the Alan Wynne Jones, who command a room from the moment they walk into it, and then there's the people who earn that leadership and that respect by the way they go about their business, and that's very much where Conor will fall into it. An exemplary professional, leads by example on the pitch, probably one of the best defensive scrum halves and tactical scrum halves in the world at the moment, and that's what they need him to do on the pitch, to be the best version of Conor Murray that he can be. And like, whatever about his form being a little bit patchy over the last 2 years, if you want something to try and generate a bit of form off of, being given the Lions captaincy should really just set him off, and he'll be that type of player who's going to inspire by actions rather than what he's going to try and say, or the most impassioned speech that he can deliver. It'll be doing the simple things brilliantly under the most intense pressure in South Africa. Yeah,
it's interesting. Sam Warburton in his book, Gordan, talked about what a nervous wreck he was trying to think, what am I going to say in my pre-match team talks. Now, Warburton was a much younger man than Murray, so maybe that won't be as much of a stress for Murray. But you would have a sense of what a Lions captain on a modern day tour does, and it would seem it's a fairly broad job description from, tour at large and functions, and well, in COVID times I don't really know will there be much going on, but elbows to bump and maybe a few speeches to give. I guess you'll probably have an extra hand in morale or around the hotel and making sure everyone's included to some extent or other, speaking to the team, and then I guess on the pitch making on-field decisions, talking to referees. Do we kick for the post? Do we kick for touch? All of that kind of stuff. What do you suspect for someone like Murray, who, as Gerry says, has one match to his name? What do you suspect will be the steepest learning curve?
Do you know what, actually? I think he has played under a captain that he will probably try to emulate in Rory Best, in that I think Rory's phenomenal skill as a captain was, he's a very strong individual, but he had an incredible leadership team underneath him, and he allowed them to thrive. He wasn't the polished captain that you might say a Brian O'Driscoll was, or a Paul O'Connell was, who you might sense the flow of a squad or something like of the tempo of a team. Martin Johnson, those kind of force of nature type players, captains. I think Rory would have set a brilliant template for that, because he had Johnny Sexton as one of the, Peter O'Mahony. Like, these guys are massive people in a team, and his job as captain was to harness and get the best out of them. So a wise man knows what he doesn't know. There's an awful lot of captaincy that Conor probably doesn't understand and probably doesn't know, but he doesn't have to, because he has got an army of them there behind him that has done it all before. So whether it is your Owen Farrell, does he come in? Is it a Mario Toji, a Ken Owens? Talking to them, understanding from them, say, where do they feel, getting their input. Maybe not necessarily at the big decisions on a pitch. Gatland will have him ready to make those decisions on the pitch. But as the training is unfolding, as the team is unfolding, it's a lot of it is taking that information in, absorbing it, and being that conduit to facilitate these guys to perform.
Yeah. Gerry, I'm talking about this like it's a real sense of trepidation. I mean, as you said, he's 89 caps, he's 32 years of age, he has 3 tours. He said himself, I'm just going to relish this and enjoy it rather than feel daunted. Like, the starting point this is the pinnacle of his career. This is an amazing thing for him to happen, and he should be delighted. Like, he shouldn't be kind of a quivering mess saying, I'm not ready, I can't do this. He should embrace it and enjoy it.
Yeah, and he's got the temperament to do so as well, Joe. I think that's important. He's a very phlegmatic, relaxed, calm kind of individual. He doesn't let much faze him or bother him. He's very even-tempered. And I think he's also proven, when you think back to 3 World Cups and 2 Lions tours, Irish tour to New Zealand, to South Africa and so forth, he's a very, very good tourist. He went out to He went to the World Cup as a surprise third choice scrum half ahead of Peter Stringer and Tomas O'Leary, and ended up coming back as first choice scrum half. He went to the Lions tour in 2013 as third choice scrum half. Had there been a fourth test, I think he would have started it, and that's been very typical of him. Lions in 2017, he started all three tests. He's one of the key players, scored the try in the second test that dragged the team back. He gets better and better as tours go on. He seemed to enjoy the whole touring concept. So I think his temperament suits this role, definitely. As Gordan says, if he just reproduces his best form, that'll be the most important thing, just leading from the front, and also use the lieutenants around him and lean on them. And, that's, I think, certainly, interviewing Brian O'Driscoll there recently, I don't know that he necessarily enjoyed being captain at such a young age in 2005. He enjoyed not being captain in 2009. It was just, he felt more free. It can be a very onerous job. I'm sure captaining the Lions would be much more onerous even than captaining your country. I remember, watching Paul O'Connell on tour and Peter O'Mahony. It can weigh heavy. It's a big onerous responsibility, and there's a risk that maybe you can take on too much. I also fear that this tour will be unlike any other Lions tour, Joe, in that, all the trappings that go with the captaincy, and you have a public speaking and events and so forth, they're not going to be there this time. But that they could be a great release for a touring squad as well, as Gordan knows better than I would. That the outdoor sports and activities, going to school visits, whatever it is, meeting sponsors, they can turn into a bit of crack. There's going to be very little escapism. They are going to be living in a very restrictive environment, which is going to be very challenging for all of them, including the captain. But you're right, it's a huge honour for Conor Murray, and he should embrace it. And I think it reflects brilliantly on probably Ireland's greatest ever scrum half, and he should enjoy it. And I think he's got the temperament to do it.
How big a loss?
Gerry,
sorry, Gordan, shoot.
Yeah, I think that's like it's worth kind of teasing that you're talking about Brian in 2009 in South Africa. I think a big thing about the Lions is saying the right things is great, and we did an awful lot of that in New Zealand. We said the right things and everything, but we, on the pitch, it didn't materialise. You look at what Brian did in that second test, and what other players did in that second test, like that attempted a tackle by Brian to kill. What's his name? Danny Rousseau coming around the corner. But look what that did for the players around him. Now, I'm not necessarily saying Conor has to go out and do that, but the way South Africa play, the tempo that the Lions have been picked to play at, it's going to provide Conor opportunities to get front football and make decisions and impact the game in a really, really powerful way. And that, I think, is going to be, and it already has been, it's going to be the theme of this Lions tour. It's what happens those 80 minutes once you step inside the whitewash. You can see Henshaw, you can see players that are already bigger, you can see they're already growing into the responsibility of what happens in that 80 minutes. And I think that's what is going to define this tour. A good example of that is going to be how Conor plays, and that's going to be his captaincy. It's not going to be what a speech he delivers or how he does it. It's going to be how he delivers on those 80 minutes when he plays, and that is, there's going to be a huge hindsight bias on this. When we look back at this, it's a successful tour. Conor plays well. It inspires the team. It just it sounds simple, but it does tend to happen like that.
Yes, no doubt. We're talking here with Gordan Darcy and Gerry Thornley. Rugby and Off the Ball with thanks to Vodafone, official sponsor of the Irish Rugby team. Team of us, everyone in. I should let you know, 16 minutes gone, Switzerland have taken a 1-0 lead against France, which is an interesting start to that game. Gordan, we'll come back to the points you make about the tempo they're trying to play with and what you took from the actual game at Murrayfield. But Gerry, to your point, just to bring people up to speed on the situation in South Africa, because as you said, this is not going to be a normal tour. The Lions have arrived. As they were flying into town, the President, Cyril Ramaphosa, was making a TV address. South Africa moving to level 4, so curfews from 9 p.m. every night for the next 2 weeks, no alcohol on sale, restaurants shut. It seems that the situation in the Gauteng province in particular, which is Johannesburg and Pretoria, is the epicentre of this very difficult third wave that South Africa is headed into. So, for instance, on Friday there were 12,000 cases in the Gauteng province. It has 15% of the population, but that's about 65% of cases nationally. The Lions are due to play their first 3 matches there, 5 of 8 in total. There's all sorts of talk now, Gerry, of maybe going down to Cape Town, and will it just be the 3 tests, or where are we? And that's not to mention, after 3 weeks, according to Razzie Erasmus, of, we think, a vaccinated South African camp following all the protocol and probably living in some kind of biosecure bubble. They had 3 positives, 1 false positive it turns out, but 3 positives on Saturday, and suddenly we were thinking, does the Georgia game even go ahead? This tour, 1, there's a stark backdrop, and if the third wave kicks off the way experts are fearing it does, there could be all sorts of questions about the optics of this thing even going ahead. But secondly, and hopefully it's not that stark a backdrop, secondly, just from logistics, keeping COVID out of the camp, and not being imprisoned in 2 hotels, this is going to be a long stint for these players.
Huge. It's going to be, and you add in it started off with 2 weeks in Jersey, which was also restrictive, but it's going to seem like a holiday compared to what they're going to go through in South Africa. And there's going to be an awful lot of outside noise about the optics of this tour. You fervently hope that the medical forecasts emanating from South Africa don't prove to be true, because they are talking about a potentially catastrophic third wave. They're talking about it being a tsunami, and yeah, it's going to be. It doesn't even bear thinking about, and that's just, it's hard to even bring a rugby discussion into something like that, because it's altogether different. I personally feel that maybe they missed a trick, the Lions board and SA Rugby, by not moving the tour to UK when they were considering this last February and March. You see crowds coming back now at the Euros, and you see crowds coming back even at rugby matches, even in the Aviva Stadium next Saturday, 3,000 and 6,000 the following week, whatever it is, and crowds coming back at Murrayfield last Saturday. It might just have been better all round, I think, if they had taken the chance of moving the tour to UK. I know there would have been traditionalists who would have complained about it being, it's not a real Lions tour if the South Africans come here, but it's not going to be a real Lions tour anyway, as you just outlined and I've just outlined, because there are going to be no fans in the stadium. There's going to be possible changes to the schedule. They're going to be living in very confined, restrictive circumstances, the Lions players, which is going to make the week seem even longer. Plus, Joe, there's been I think a damaging change to the tour itinerary, in that there's no midweek matches before the first and second test. That's going to make those last 3 weeks seem very long indeed for the players outside the 23 in the first test. They're thinking, have I got another couple of weeks here in this camp, 3 weeks in this camp, with no chance of me making the test team? That's going to make for a very long, drawn-out end game as well. I think it's going to be very, very trying, and it's going to be unlike any other tour we've known. And personally, you factor all that in, I know there'll be no home crowd there, but for the Lions to win this series against the current world champions might even be a bigger achievement than drawing away to the All Blacks 4 years ago. Yeah.
Gordan, your sense of Gerry's points there?
Yeah, it's hard to argue. They're based on common sense, so that's usually a good starting point. I don't think anything in COVID makes sense anymore. So I think from the players' perspective, their resilience that they're showing through this period is it's pretty impressive. I know they're getting to do something that they love and everything, but the parameters that they've been outlined since COVID is playing, and I suppose the joy it's bringing to people who can watch it safely on the screen. But the players have just gotten on with it. A couple of players have pulled out of various tours and various tournaments and stuff, just saying they can't do the bubbles. But the majority of players are just getting on with it, and I don't think there's any curveball left to throw at them that can probably derail the kind of the mental resilient piece that they have currently. I agree with Gerry. This whatever about being in your bubbles in the safety of your own kind of province, your own club, and your own town where things are largely under control. You're going into kind of a very, very hot area with COVID, and it's going to be challenging. And it's just, I think these guys are going to they deserve everything they've gotten to this point, and I just hope they have a tour to play, and that they do, and they get to play the proper South African team, because we saw from Japan at the weekend that had they played a little bit more rugby, that would have been a little bit more of a closer game. and you just wonder how much that is going to be playing into the South Africans, as well as the Lions.
As an aside, and I know 05 and 09 were very different experiences, but did you find those tours long? Like, were you pretty happy to get home? Did they drag on, or were they pretty enjoyable and kept you involved and interested all the way through?
There's certain parts of being a professional sports player that are just not that fun. So you just have to, and I remember Keith Wood saying it before I went. I didn't really understand what he meant till it was much later about going off tour, and how bad that can be. And I can understand when he was stuck in 97 that I suppose it's probably easier to stay on tour if you're winning. So, 05 and 09 were very, very different propositions. And, I came out late to South Africa, but it was an awful lot easier to watch those test matches in South Africa when you were still in the hunt.
Yeah, I can imagine. Well, hopefully the situation improves and it's not as serious as they're predicting, primarily for the health, obviously, of people in South Africa, and secondly for this Lions tour, which just has this stark backdrop, as I said. On the pitch, Gerry, Alan Wynne-Jones, whatever about the captaincy, how big a loss is he? What's the likely Lions' second row now?
He's possibly a bigger loss as a leader than he is as a player, and I don't mean that any disrespect to him as a player, because he's a warrior, and he looked, even in the 7 minutes on the pitch, and as he has done for Wales and Six Nations, he's looked as good as ever. But they are well stocked in the second row. You could see a second row of Maro Itoje and Ian Henderson, which would be very athletic, very suited to maybe taking on the Springboks, whoever they have in the second row. It's just, it could, and they've got Courtney Laws there, and they've got good options, no doubt about it. It's a pity James Ryan wasn't available. Seemingly he has a bit of an injury. He was sounded out by Warren Gatland about going out, but he picked up a little bit of an injury in training last Thursday, which the RFU described as an abductor issue. But in any event, that meant that he wasn't called out, which is a shame. Yeah. But I think that they'll miss Alan Wynne-Jones certainly as a leader. I don't necessarily think that the lineup will be affected. I think, Ian Henderson stepped up very well after Alan Wynne-Jones went off and called the lineouts. Itoje can be a force of nature, as we know. So I think that part of it's just more his leadership and his status and him being that figurehead. You know what I mean? I remember, Gordan, when the Lions lost Lawrence Dallaglio in the early stages of the Bay of Plenty game in 05. It just went, even though he wasn't captain, he was he had been reinstated as an England captain. He was a World Cup winner. Certain players generate a certain status over a prolonged period of time in their careers, particularly forwards, particularly big men. And it just felt like a pretty drastic blow when Lawrence Dallaglio was ruled out of that tour. But I do think the Lions might be able to cope on the pitch, certainly, yeah.
That's interesting. I hadn't heard James Ryan had been sounded out, so obviously they were semi-interested. Because I know he's not officially out of Ireland's 2 tests, Gerry. I know he does have that injury, but they haven't officially ruled him out yet, which suggests, the word back to Gatland might have been, well, I can come out. I might need a week or 10 days to get over the injury, maybe.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And they just decided not to take the risk with an injured player.
Okay.
Yeah, probably.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess this thing is a sprint. They don't want any injured players hanging around.
Yeah.
How do you see the second row then, Gordan?
My area of expertise. I'm I suppose a little bit less clear on how it's going to play out, because you look at the squad that they picked, which is very much around utility players and quite mobile players. So if that's the way the Lions are going to play against South Africa, then you need to have you need to really double down on that. I could see Henderson and Itoje being quite good bets in that regard. I don't think that necessarily gives you great options in the line-out. I know Faletau would be an option at the back, but I would see Courtney Laws or Hill coming in and into that just for that extra little bit of physicality, because rugby becomes this beautifully simple game when you get parity up front. But let's not underestimate what that means when you're going up against this current South African squad are absolute beasts of players. Etzebeth, you have Snyman coming back now. whoever you want to pick in the back row, like this is like South Africa can just, without any game practice, can just wrestle you into a game that can sap all your energy. So you need parity up front, and you do need to match them in that physical stakes to a certain extent. So I'm not sure. I think Ian Henderson could lose out in this. I think we do have a little bit of a tunnel vision on that, but he's played one game and he played well on that game. He called the lineouts. Japan didn't really contest against us in the lineout, so we looked good. But there will be other players. The other players are going to play against more physical opposition in the coming weeks. So, but I just think like the lineout is going to be so crucial for us, because we got such a good example of what the Lions could do with quality ball. You saw Aki getting over the gain line. Look how well he got over the gain line. They came from Chris delivery off the top. But it was Temperament was the guy that actually makes the crucial pass. And actually in the build-up to that, the way he played, he probably shifted the ball away from the breakdown 3 or 4 times in the space of about 90 seconds. So I think his actual loss to the way the Lions are potentially going to play this game is going to be exasperated as the tour goes on.
Yeah, he's been in brilliant form. So on the Lions 28, Japan 10, Gerry, I'll bring in on this in a second. Then Gordan, you might just give us some other things which jumped out to you. So I think you said initially you think the Lions, based on what you saw and what you're hearing, they're going to try and put real tempo into the game. And I think you mentioned Murray's quick, tap and goes, that kind of stuff. They're going to try and move South Africa around. Well,
I think they kind of have to. They haven't gone for. I think even just the little things of Billy Vunipola, players like that. He didn't take a risk on Manu Tuolangi, even though he was coming back to fitness. He's picked mobile players that can play in multiple positions. So either that's he's just looking for durability and trying to get through. But to me, that seems that he's picked players that want to play at pace in key positions. You look at the back row: Simmons, you've Faletau. Again, a little bit short on game plan. Conan coming in. These are players that look to avoid contact rather than create contact.
Do you like that approach? Do you think that's the right approach?
Yeah, well, listen. I'm 5'10", so that was always my modus operandi, was to try and find the softest point for contact, which was usually the open space.
Sure, and do you think that's the best way to try and beat the South African side as well?
Yeah, because and again, it's like it's not an ideology. Big men don't like being moved around the place. They like to stand around rucks, and they like players to run into them, and then you get into an arm wrestle, and they're going to come out on top because that's not draining their cardiovascular reserves. They're not having to run around. They can make good decisions, and it comes into that. Who's going to win a contact with the same amount of a run-up? We know the South Africans are built for that, but what they're not built around for is multi-phase play, playing at tempo, 2 decision makers on the field. If you have a Liam Williams, Stuart Hogg, Conor Murray, making different access points into their defensive lines and making tired big men make tough decisions, they will make mistakes.
Gerry, what did you make of the game at Murrayfield?
Well, offensively, I thought you could see, the influence of Gregor Townsend over the last 2 weeks in Jersey. I thought it was interesting the way they regularly kind of probed the blind side early on. Do you remember Conor Murray linking up with Duhan van der Merwe? So that in turn opened up the whole width of the pitch. I thought Dan Baker put some real pace on his passing. The Duhan van der Merwe try, there was one skip pass right to left and another one left to right. And then from the recycle, van der Merwe scored initially a very soft try. There was good shape, I thought, to attack at times, Defensively, I thought they got a little bit narrow at times, as Jamie Heasley picked up in commentary, that there was one occasion actually where I think Michael Leach ran into contact near the end of the first half and they had 4-man overlap on his outside. Much and all, as the Springboks love a bit of contact, I don't think they'll be passing up opportunities like that. But yeah, I thought it was encouraging enough, albeit that the challenge presented by Japan will be the polar opposite of what the Springboks present.
And which Irish players caught the eye, Gerry?
Jack Conan, thought was very good, leading carrier in the game, using the wide channels where he can be really effective. Got them over the gain line a couple of times before Ty Burns' stupendous finish. Ty definitely enjoyed that one, didn't he? Why wouldn't he? Ty was good. He's a good line-out option as well, which he played into his hands. Actually didn't really, utilise his point of difference so much, and that being that strength over the ball and the jackal. But I thought he carried really well, defended well, and was good in defence. The other thing I noticed about the Lions as well was how early on they went for choke tackles as a means of turnover, all across the pitch, midfield, back rowers, everybody. Henderson involved, Bundyaki and Robbie Henshaw involved, and be interested to see if they're going to use that against the Springboks. It worked quite well. I thought Bundy didn't get an awful lot of ball to carry, but the little bit, as Gordan highlighted, he did very well. And he actually won two turnovers in the jackal, which only one of which he picked up in commentary. That's a real string to his bow. And I just sense that Gatlin's a fan. Robbie Henshaw just looks really, really strong.
Yeah.
But then Gordan makes a really good point, like, because the 7 Irish guys all went well, and that's not being biased. That's not wearing green tinted glasses. They went well, but then they're playing against Japan, so the probability is that none of the 7 will start next Saturday against the Emirates Lions, which will be a more authentic test.
Yes, sure. What was your take on the Irish contingent, Gordan, finally?
Yeah, like I think it was an undercooked Japanese squad, and like the reason why I suppose I was thinking about the tempo was the tempo that they played at, and had they a little bit more match sharpness, I think they would have caused the Lions a problem. So you take that and you mirror it into what the Lions could do or can do. There's the guts of a game plan there. Yeah, like I said, all the Irish guys that they went with, I thought Tadhg Furlong was fired up. For one of these some big ass collisions with Tadhg, and it's great to see him back at that I suppose at that type of form and a bit of bite in his game. And one of the things I love about Tadhg is he has that bit of dog in him, and the Lions are going to need that, because that position that he plays in is so pivotal, but he offers so much more around the game. He's redefined what a front row forward can do with the ball in hand. Again, yeah, Bundy really strong. Didn't get red carded, so that's always a good starting point as well. No high shots. But yeah, like I'd say Conor Murray will start. Now he's the Lions captains. I actually think he may start the first game in South Africa. But you couldn't have asked the guys to do any better to put themselves in the shop window. And for this Lions team to do well, they need the other players to take that and do better and increase the level of performance for the Lions team, so that when they get their next shot, they have to perform. And then it's an easy decision for Gatland, because you're picking players on form, so you're kind of pushing them to push themselves out of their comfort zone as a team, and still high. Like, this is the horrible bit about being Lions, right? You want to play as a team, but you've also got to put yourself in the shop window. So you're kind of screwed if you do and you don't. You want to. Do you push passes? Do you not push passes? Do you pass? Do you not pass? Do you carry? All those little things. You're completely dependent on the players around you, but you still want to put yourself in the shop window. So Bundy is a perfect example. As Gerry said, he only got 2 or 3 carries, but he made them count. So Gatland's going to look at that. Okay, that's job ticked. Made his tackles, made his turnovers, did as much as he could in that game. Now it's going to be who's going to come in as 12. Maybe Robbie gets a go at 12, or Owen Farrell comes in at 12. What does he do?
We'll wait and see over the coming weeks. Gordan Darcy, thanks so much. Gerry Thornley of the Irish Times. Thanks, fellas. Great stuff.
Cheers, Joe. Cheers, Gordan.
Thanks a million.
I should let you know as well. So this 9-match tour started with Saturday's warm-up, obviously, at Murrayfield. We have all the games live here and Off the Ball, live commentary of all the games. So the game against the Emirates Lions next Saturday, live here on Off the Ball, right the way through until the third and final test. And it's all with thanks to Vodafone, lead partner of the British and Irish Lions. We'll take a short break, 37 minutes gone in Bucharest, and it's France 0, Switzerland 1 still. So France, I think we all expected to maybe breeze through this one. It's not happening so far. 36 minutes gone. France 0, Switzerland 1.
Monday Night Rugby on Off the Ball.
With Vodafone, official sponsors of the Irish rugby team. Team of us. Everyone in.
Screen time.
It's the case that's both horrified and transfixed the nation. The unsolved murder